welcome to Check Out This Guy. This is the podcast where we open up a box and unpack a whole lot of guys. Can you tell that I moved recently? I'm Emery. My pronouns are they, she, he.
Hi, and I'm Izzy. My pronouns are she or he, and this is the podcast where we get to talk about my favorite fictional universe.
Damn, even more favorite than the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Oh, definitely.
And we have a guest today to talk with us about this one, parentheses, universe.
Uh-huh.
Hi, I'm Dan. Pronouns he, they. I'm glad you can finally get me on because I think we're supposed to be talking about the sort of the story that started the concept of the Isoverse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, just to be clear, personally, I don't recall exactly what. Do you want me? How much detail do you want me to go into? Are we specifically talking about the story as a whole? Are we talking about the characters that sort of like my main GM NPCs?
I mean, yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking just like, give the audience as much context as they need, but mostly talk about the characters.
Yeah.
Got it.
Guest choice.
Right.
That's true. Guest's choice.
All right. So the Isoverse started with a campaign that I just grabbed a couple people together for, called Fellowship, the Otherworldly Company. So, if I recall right, I put out like a message onto a couple different places, messaged a couple different people. I distinctly recall the 6 Feet Under Discord was a big place. Where
That's where you got me.
That's where Spike came from. I can't remember if Patrick also saw the invite there or if I invited him.
Yeah, I think you
separately.
reached out to Patrick. Yeah, I think you reached out to Patrick specifically because a couple of people had dropped out.
Yes,
and we needed a third.
Right. That's right. I remember now. Yeah. I messaged a couple other people, including Emery.
I actually responded to the post on Pot of Greed Discord.
That's right. Thank you. So, I guess for the inspiration, at the time, I was pretty active in a group of bad anime watchers. Like, we got together every night on, like, I don't know, I think this was before Discord streaming initially. I think we started on Rab.it, you remember that? And I was pretty active in there. That, like, being with those people watching weird dubbed anime was what got me into joining Pot of Greed.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. And one thing we definitely had an attachment to, I suppose, was Bad Isekai and Sword Art Online. Watching all of these, like, not very good, very gimmicky isekai that are largely adaptations of web novels, got me. At some point, I got so fed up with it, with these shows, that I thought, what if I made a story or a tabletop campaign where these people were the villains, and I could send the local heroes to fight them. That resulted in the Otherworldly Company.
Yeah, and this, quickly I do want to mention, like, this campaign definitely holds, like, a special place, I think, particularly for the three of us, and also
Yes.
Patrick, because that's where, I had done, like, a podcast episode with Dan previously, but other than that, this was, like, my first time really, like, meeting and hanging out with all of y'all. So this is kind of where, like, our friendship started between the three of us, and that's fucking really neat. We have an origin story, and
Yes.
we're about to talk about it.
Yeah, I not to put too much weight on you, but yes, this in many ways changed my life.
Yeah, I sometimes think about, God, I really did change this person's life immensely.
For the
inviting
better.
them, yeah, for the better, for sure. Anyways, so I guess I can start with the basic premise, where in this sort of fantasy region, not quite fantasy region, there's isekai, like, people get isekai'd here all the time. And this is shaped things in many ways. Most people live in, I guess I should say most humans live in a city called Isoverse. I pretty much only named it because I had watched a friend play a bit of Dark Souls and was trying to think of like a city name. As far as I know, I do not recall anything about the lore of the Lost Witch of Isolith in Dark Souls proper. I just wanted to give it a name. I thought, I tried to think of like some of the fun implications of that, as well as like how like one of the big problems is there's just this community there's this adventuring guild that's just causing more problems than they're worth.
Sure are.
Yeah, no, a lot of their sort of adventuring quests, tends to be directly antagonistic to, like, the local residents of the world.
Mm-hmm. They want loot. They want loot. They want experience. They want
to go into a dungeon and, fight some kobolds in order to steal their treasure. But kobolds are kind of just like regular guys. Mm-hmm. They're kind of just people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose the important step here, I guess, would be to talk a bit about some of the major figures. So I think the first person would be the original Overlord in this scenario, the hero Lance. He's very inspired to me he was inspired by very boring shonen protagonists in isekai anime, in particular Kirito. He's got like dual wield swords. He's got like black hair and a black trench coat. He's just a very bland person.
Yeah, definitely kind of a generic jock protagonist kind of vibe going on.
Lance is sort of inciting incident of the campaign is that Lance is told that Gilly is the Demon Lord and must be stopped at all costs.
Gilly Nibs, who you may recall from the Gilly and Xenu episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
The famous halfling demon lord.
Gilly, of course, I think this involved Lance like attacking Gilly's village or something.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So Gilly sets out with a couple others that had been slighted by Lance to fight. Well, some of them wanted to fight. I think Gilly specifically just wanted to sort things out.
Yeah, Gilly just wanted to clear their name initially, and but as they journeyed more, they realized, oh, the guild needs to fucking die.
Yeah.
So, the person who had informed Lance of this like incident was Jericho. Jericho is a middle-aged man with, like, I think he's bald, he's got a beard, and unlike Lance, who is more of an anime asshole, Jericho is a grognard. Jericho is Jericho is based on a real person, which is to say, a really rude and annoying man I knew when I was in Pathfinder Society.
Mm-hmm.
He sucked ass. I don't want to get too into details, but like, I want to. But a key thing about Jericho is he believes in power gaming. He wants power. He's a mage. He learned how to do magic. And he's sort of the he turns it out to be like the true overlord, because one of the things you can do in Fellowship is you take down the overlord, but then there's actually a bigger threat behind them. What Jericho wants Iso to be is a Tolkien-esque fantasy story. Not just, regular halflings, regular dwarves, regular elves, none of this weird stuff. None of these, like, ferret creatures or anything like that.
Yeah, he's a genre purist.
Yeah.
It's like, he hates all this furry and robot shit.
Yeah.
He is such a guy that sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will mention that the guy he was based on specifically said he thought the samurai class in Pathfinder had some good stats, but he didn't want to play it because he felt that playing a samurai would be incongruous to the setting of Pathfinder.
Fucking incredible. Pathfinder, like, a game with... there's some wild bullshit in Pathfinder,
There's...
I'm sure.
I'm trying to remember...
Yeah. I was about to mention a thing from Pathfinder, then I remembered I don't know anything about Pathfinder.
Yeah. Pathfinder just has you going all over the world, going all sorts of places, meeting all sorts of people. I remember a really fun...
Yeah, I know Pathfinder is, like, it's... I think, or at least, like, the initial iteration of it was based on D&D 3.5, and like D&D 3.5, it just had, like, 10 million expansions and stuff like, all sorts of different genres and whatnot.
Yeah.
Ironically, given what you're saying about Jericho, like, my understanding is that Pathfinder exists because there were a bunch of grognards upset that they were making a new edition of D&D.
Yeah, 4E even. Like, I remember people who really didn't like 4E, so they just made 3.5 again and called it Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jericho is like... Allegedly, Jericho had witnessed a prophecy that Gilly would become the Demon Lord. But weirdly, when Gilly and company went to confront him, he gave them a job.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like Gilly. I think he doesn't really care about Gilly initially, he does care a lot more about, like, one of the characters that was following Gilly around at the time, who was an exile character who had to leave at a later point. Although I did later reincorporate them as an NPC later on in the story.
Anodyne, right?
Anodyne, that's right. Anodyne's an elf. I think Anodyne was inspired by Eris Morn from Destiny. I always imagined Anodyne in my head that way. Yeah, they go to Jerichova, which is the Adventurer Guild town. It's got, like, a statue of Jericho. It's basically just some shops and a guild hall, and everything else is just sort of like either under construction or an encampment. they go there. They are, for some reason, offered a job. And like, oh, you know what? I remember now.
Because I was there.
I can't remember if... Was the Goblin Queen stuff established yet?
I remember the job was to go to the last city and steal some ancient technology.
Yeah. Go steal some ancient technology. We can't get through the defenses. I think I remember now. Jericho hires them and says, "If you do this, I'll turn the other way."
Jericho's a fucking liar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jericho's kind of a liar and an asshole. So he sends the Fellowship on their way, and they go to like the island where it's located, and there they meet probably the third most important human NPC and personal favorite of mine, Same.
Yeah. Same sure had a character arc.
I have my old character sheet in front of me. And yes, it does still say, "Oh no, am I friends with Same-san?"
So, Same-san is a weeb. He's a samurai, he's a weeb. He has like a collection of anime tapes or anime DVDs, I think. Sort of like with him at all times. He's got shit taste. He's specifically a big fan of Chobits. Chobits is an anime about a man adopting a android girl who looks like a human but with like headphones on. And
famously, the on-off button is in the pussy.
I mean, that's also true. It doesn't come up that much, all things considered. It's just this...
That's still not good.
No.
I don't know practically anything about Chobits except the pussy part.
Yeah, it's not something that really comes up after the first time, but the important thing to know is it is about how cool it would be if you had a sort of a robot android companion who had to do it, who was just mysterious but totally complicit with whatever you told them.
Oh no.
Yeah. I can't recall how weird it gets with that. I just remembered thinking that the relationship between the two was weird and uncomfortable. Also, the other thing I remember from watching the dub, the thing to avoid this is a tangent. The other thing I remember is that Izzy from Digimon voices like this side character who's like a boy genius with his own Persicom. Persicoms are the name of the androids. And we were very fixated and kind of annoyed by this one Persicom who is just like a tiny little woman. But continuing on.
So, long story short, Gilly broke the DVD, and then one of the all-time moments of the campaign for me happened, which is that Same held a funeral for the broken Chobits DVD.
Yes. I specifically recall fucking around with one of those Discord music bots to pipe in, like, some not very good rendition of Kom Todd. I don't remember... I think it might have been a recorder version, but I can't remember. It might have just been instrumental.
Yeah, I think it was instrumental. Wasn't Same supplying the vocals?
Same was supplying the vocals.
Let's go.
Yeah. I do remember that there was singing because the lyrics were brought up in conversation. In game.
Yeah. So some more details on Same as a character. Same, in addition to just being a huge weeb, was inspired by two things in particular, which were this story that a guy told me while I was playing Destiny with him in a Discord server that I'm not sure is real, but was interesting regardless, about having to get into a fight with a weeb at his college in the 2000s. The whole story's a little far-fetched, but I did think this would make a fun scenario for my characters to deal with.
But by getting into a fight with a weeb, do you mean like a physical fight?
Yes. Specifically,
Incredible.
According to the story, this specifically involved, like, going to this, like, rich weeb young man's home and fighting with, I don't remember if they were real or wooden, but fighting with swords. Or he offered to fight with swords, and then this guy who was telling me the story instead took out a bat and was able to be much more intimidating. But yeah, that's sort of I thought, wouldn't it be fun to fight a guy like this in this game?
And then we never actually fought him.
Yeah,
Correct.
He was...
Gilly befriended him too quickly.
Yeah, we
befriended this mofo.
We did make friends with him. Another distinct detail is Same's voice. Another thing I had been doing at the time was, in the Jurgenet Discord, there were fanfic readings, and I got exposed to Sam and Jordan's voice for Ben. Go listen to Jurgenet if you want, like, an example of how it's used, but imagine a guy who talks like this all the time. And that's sort of the gist.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, important details. After the DVD breaks, he holds the funeral. Eventually, like, the Fellowship runs off with a headset that the people of the Last City gave them. They continue on their adventures. They meet some other people. Whenever I couldn't think of a guy to make up, I usually just went with, like, a Counter-Strike dude with a gun.
Mm-hmm. There is someone that we met before those guys.
Yes, there's the scientist, Dr. Phineas Photon. Oh. Unless there's
that too, but that's not who I was thinking of.
Yeah, we met that guy at around the same time. Certain other character.
Yeah, we met the two of them at the exact same time because they were together.
Right.
We're talking about Corncob.
Corncob.
Yes. Corncob, who I hate.
Yes.
My favorite guy.
Right. So around that time, I think... Oh, actually, this is a fun detail about Iso that never really comes up again, but I love. There's, like, this big bridge that's run by, like, two groups, two sort of, like, settlements of trolls. One thing about, like, the isekai nature of this world is, like, people come in from all sorts of times. It's been happening for, like, 200 years or so. Maybe closer to 150, but at some point in, like, the 80s, a businessman gets teleported there, and his adventure involves teaching these trolls about the values of bureaucracy. And so we get, like, the sort of twin cities of Bao and Zhao and the connecting Bao Zhao bridge. In order to get through it, you gotta do a bunch of paperwork. At this point, I introduce an anti-fellowship, just three weirdos that are kind of like the characters that at this point have sort of solidified as the main characters. I remember, was Phineas Photon with them, or was?
Yeah.
There was Phineas Photon, there was Corn Cob, and I can't immediately... Oh, I think it was like a... Oh, you know what, I remember now. There was like a golem dude that, like, I think Phineas Photon was, like, controlling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Rustwalker? Omega?
Rustwalker Omega, thank you. I can't remember if there was anyone else. I know I feel like there had to...
those three.
Just those three? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But Corn Cob is... Corn Cob is a sort of a trickster whose de facto way to get away with things is to say, I'm just a little guy. It's my birthday.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, also crucially, Corn Cob, like Gilly, is a halfling, and I believe the first time he was introduced, you described him as being cuter than Gilly, at which point I was like, oh, this motherfucker. This is my enemy forever.
Uh-huh. A big thing about Corn Cob visually, in sort of like what Corn Cob is supposed to look like, is just trying to either impersonate Gilly or outdo or outclass Gilly in Corn Cob whatever
tried to,
Gilly's good at. Create some confusion that would have put the Fellowship in hot water.
Yeah, Corn Cob was essentially, just like going around, saying that they're Gilly, that he is Gilly Nibs, the Demon Lord, and just doing various mischief.
Also, Corn Cob was a bully.
To sort of ruin Gilly's...
Corn Cob was a bully. I think one thing that was like semi-canon is Corn Cob used to bully Gilly Nibs when they were both kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't think Gilly remembers this, or is just like, oh yeah, Corn Cob, we were friends. Not really remembering the bullying. And Gilly and Corn Cob had another like all-time moment from the early campaign where like Corn Cob was in a tavern just causing like general mischief, like like knocking people's drinks over, like that kind of low stakes evil behavior. And Gilly yeah, they both got into a confrontation, the nature of which was like they just were both trying to be cuter and more pathetic than the other to try and convince everyone in the tavern that they were in fact the real Demon Lord, and Gilly won. They were all they were both kind of doing like the whiny it's my birthday
and
voice.
then Rustwalker Omega busted down the wall.
It was really good.
So that Corn Cob could run away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so eventually as things develop, I believe as things develop, the Fellowship ends up going to Boss Vegas. Boss Vegas, also major location, and very related to another character I play in the second campaign. Boss Vegas is... Well, it's fantasy Las Vegas. It is run by a guy named Boss Hoss. He is a dragon. I think at this point, Dragon Lore is still pretty early on, so basically he can just like change back and forth from like dragon, just a full-on dragon, to I can't remember if it was a human man or like just a human-sized anthro dragon.
I thought it was like that.
It was one of those. Yeah,
that's what I remember.
Yeah, I remember him having a lot of Jabba the Hutt vibes.
He's a shady businessman. He creates the place essentially because his desire is to hoard wealth and value, and he does this by luring people into this place where fortunes are made and lost in a minute.
And therefore I came to the conclusion, a false dragon.
Interesting. The players like go in. One very distinct visual thing I had established about Las Vegas is the traditional entrance is you go in on a river. I don't remember it was called like a river. I think it was called like the River of Green because essentially just the area surrounding it had like growth and foliage where the rest of the area, which was a big desert, did not. And there's just like this big fake moon that keeps it in perpetual night. So they go here. The Fellowship gets into a tenacious spinball tournament.
Tenacious spinball, a regular and normal sport.
Oh, the most normal.
Fellowship has a really, really fun, what's the word it's called? Set piece called the sports tournament, where the players have to come up with a sport for them all to sort of, take place a sports tournament in, up against some rivals. So each player gets to like come up with some details, and then there's like there's a series of like rising through the ranks until like the big final conflict. Tenacious Spinball functionally is like, it's a weird mix of like basketball on a pinball court, and also there's a water element. I think like you can fall into water. It is a very silly sport, and I love it a lot.
Yeah, if you dunk, you'll end up wet.
Yeah, you have to bounce the basketball off of like bumpers and shit to and then like to like score to rack up potential points, and then once you dunk the ball, then you get all the accumulated points from doing your little bounces.
So in addition to that, I think this is where we start. Las Vegas is also where we start the running gag of real people from the real world showing up in ESO. Most in particular, like minor or washed up celebrities.
Aww.
Well, maybe washed up is a rude way to put it. Minor celebrities is maybe more accurate. Just
famously before the Tenacious Spinball tournament, Gilly and Xenu went to a Bowling for Soup concert.
Yes, which I want to remind y'all, we came up with Bowling for Soup being there in session 0.
All right. I forgot about that. I forgot it went back that early.
Because that's how I knew the lyrics for were sung for Kamsuas Todd, because Xenu compared it to Life After Lisa, because she thought all music was Bowling for Soup.
Some stuff that some other important things that happen in Las Vegas, like Corncob and his crew. Corncob's crew goes up against the Fellowship.
Also, Silica played Yu-Gi-Oh against one of the other generals whose name I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I don't remember much about that guy other than that he was like, his thing was that he he was always down for competitions and would like make decisions based on that or something. You could he's very good at what he does, but he'd much rather duel you for it.
Yeah, Gilly stabbed that guy and then felt very guilty about doing violence.
Hey, we made it through that entire campaign with only one death.
Yeah. Kind of wild considering.
Some other things I recall from that part. We get to meet Boss Haas. This is actually a very important thing now that I'm remembering it. Boss Haas sort of invites the Fellowship for their victory to like come up, talk with him, take on a job, and acquire a special relic. And that's where Gilly got the Blade of Darkest Night.
We all got to get one thing from the vault.
Yeah, we got prizes for winning in the tournament, and you know, Dan gave us like a list of loot that we could choose from, and for some reason I was like, yeah, I want the evil sword that makes you fucked up and Joker. For my silly little halfling. This is the best. This is a good idea, I think.
Yeah,
and it was.
Celica took a belt buckle that looked like an NES gamepad that could pause time.
Oh, that's right.
Which I think got used like once throughout the course of the campaign.
Yes, I mean, like that's a very powerful item, though. And I noticed that there was a vault within the vault. So I negotiated my prize when I asked to see the stuff in there.
Yeah, I can't quite remember how it shook out, but essentially
we freed a lot of slaves.
Yeah, you did do that.
Xenu bought out a bunch of indentured servant contracts with as her reward for winning.
Yes, but the official story was that Gilly Gilly was rich and was able to buy out all these contracts.
Which is not true. I don't think Gilly has a significant amount of money.
Not then.
Certainly not the amount that would be required to do that.
Yeah.
An important thing here the other vault, essentially there's the sort of public display vault, which is where they got all their cool little bits of gear. And then there was like the secondary vault where the money was actually kept. At this point, I believe the Fellowship got to meet this bounty hunter guy. I don't remember much about it. I don't remember his name.
Hatchet.
Yeah.
The only one I remember is Jagger.
They meet this bounty hunter very briefly, and I believe from this point, the next really big thing that happens is the Fellowship gets to befriend and recruit Dr. Phineas Photon and visit a Goblin Spire. I can't. Did Xenu like lose consciousness at this point, or was that later?
Yeah, that was like. Yeah, that was very shortly after the Spinball tournament.
Yeah. I hope that we covered that in the Xenu and Gilly episode in enough detail, but basically, she abused her body to ensure that she abused her body trying to beat Lance in combat.
Right.
And basically, even though she was basically immortal, she almost killed herself.
She took too much damage from playing sports, just like the NFL.
Yeah. Let's see.
So the rest of the party had to cross the desert dragging my body.
Thankfully, one of the people there is a big sort of crystal creature. So it wasn't too hard. Aside from, the attrition of the desert sands. Uh,
And we also had Rustwalker Omega, a big fucking mech to help us cross the desert.
Yeah. You get Phineas Photon, who just sort of like pops in and out of the campaign to just like work on fun inventions. Plays a very important role in Silica's story. I imagine we can, if you want to do an episode with Patrick about Silica, you could talk about it there.
Definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also a couple of interactions with Same I remember from around that time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like during an early conflict, leading up to the spinball tournament, Gilly just kind of, Same was there with the other generals, and Gilly just did kind of pull them aside for a moment to be like, hey, don't actually let Lance hurt anyone.
Uh-huh. And Xenu, Xenu gave him the repaired Chobits DVD.
Yeah, that's a big part of this is reforging the friendship, or forging a friendship by reforging a DVD.
Yeah, exactly. And was this no, I think this was when Gilly also ran into Same in the DVD store, right?
Yes.
And they asked, still feeling a little tense about their whole, relationship, because Same is ostensibly still with the enemies at this point, but Gilly did ask for an anime recommendation from Same, and would you like to
I remember this.
To recount Same's response?
Same.
That was when
I know
Gilly
what it was.
watched Conception.
Please reminds me. It's been a minute.
Conception.
Oh, right. He gives him the Conception DVD. One of the anime I watched in that group was Conception. It's a weird show. It's based on a fucking dungeon crawler, if you would believe it.
I know.
An isekai anime about breeding various anime wives.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
From what I understand.
Yeah, and there's like a fun companion. There's like a red panda. This is a core detail, of course, and why I included it. So what happens next? Yeah, we go to the Spire. I think from here I would ask, is there anything we're getting on? I think this is we're about 40 minutes in. It says more on my my podcast reading, but we took a little break in between. So
yeah, I mean, I think the characters we probably want to focus on from this point are probably Jericho, Same, and Lance.
Yeah. So
those are the three characters who kind of like undergo the most change throughout. Or maybe Jericho doesn't, but he's like also very significant.
So Lance, I think I'll go Lance, then Same, then Jericho, because that's sort of like the order this. They sort of develop. So
makes sense.
Lance is eventually like confronted. I believe on like in a sort of like forest area that the elves live in, and the Fellowship fights them. They find out he's got like a weird jewel thing on him that's making him just sort of coercive to Jericho's will.
Oh, not like a small jewel either. Like a big fucking ostrich egg type thing.
Yeah.
Just like fucking glooped into his chest.
Yeah.
I thought it was embedded in his back, like
It was in his back.
like a beetle or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Yeah. It was like a stag beetle or something, or possibly a scarab.
Uh-huh. And he was carrying the Challenger sword.
Yeah, he had the Challenger sword. This is a notable thing about Lance. He defeated the Challenger, took his sword, and
Which is supposed to be impossible.
Yeah.
You know.
Uh-huh.
he's an anime protagonist. He can defy the impossible.
Exactly.
And like a distinct thing is him realizing we're the baddies. We, the guild, are the baddies. And he sort of like takes a sort of like backseat in the story from this point on. He does
Because Jericho fucking kidnaps him and puts him in a lab.
Yes.
He kidnapped him and put him in a lab as a form of both torture, punishment, and learn how to do magic good and better.
Oddly, little guy is the one who saves him.
Yeah, little guy,
And they have a team up.
Little guy is very sweet and naive at this point in the story, and I remember right. So this would be a good point to bring up. Eventually, they return to Jerichova and find like this secret lab underneath the guild where they're doing fucked up experiments. This very distinctly involves this is very important to Silica's story because one of the things that they're trying to figure out is how to kill his people more effectively since they're basically unkillable. Some other details. So yeah, eventually Lance gets rescued. Same
Same at that point I think Same was with the party.
Yeah.
I seem to recall Same princess carrying him out of there.
Yes. But before that we found Same in Basilia.
Yeah, Same was in Basilia because he fucked up too many times and Jericho fired him from the guild. So he's just trying to find it. I think at this point he tries to sort of set up a shop there.
Yeah.
Anime theater.
Yeah, an anime theater that I think also doubled as like a shop or possibly a friendly local game store. Eventually Lance and Same would sort of become romantic partners and live there for the rest of their lives, all the way into the second campaign.
At some point, Same acquired a warehouse full of every imaginable Dakimakura.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he gets a lot of weird things, including some Dakimakura. I think in the second campaign we came up with this like very exaggerated version of the first campaign story, featuring I think like Gilly as an actual demon lord and possibly a sexy anime babe. I don't remember.
No, the Blade of Darkest Night got to turn into the Babe of Darkest Night.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Gilly's story kind of got like a exaggerated folktale sort of quality to it, and got kind of weird.
Yeah. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? This is what happens when weebs tell your story.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Serendipitously, I recently finished playing or Like a Dragon Ishin, which is a very, very bizarre fanficky retelling of the Bakamatsu, the end of the Bakamatsu period. Essentially, the fall of the shogunate, the Tokugawa shogunate, and the beginning of the Meiji Restoration. There's like some weird stuff in there. But going on, another big. This leaves us with what happened to Jericho. So Jericho has like, I remember like something going on the moon. They go to the moon, and it might have been a false
but not
moon.
the real moon.
Yeah, it was another false moon. And on there, Jericho confronts them in the form of like a statue of himself. And he reveals that there was no prophecy. He made it up. But the thing about prophecies, they fulfill themselves.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I talked about this in the Gilly Xenu episode, but Gilly was very scared by that prophecy. They didn't want to become evil, and like, you know, even knowing it might have been bullshitted, like they got the evil sword that kind of was fucking with their head a lot. They were like, man, they were also like acquiring an amount of like magical and political power that was just kind of like a whole lot for them all at once. So they were like, boy, it would, you know, the possibility of me becoming like a force that is capable of destroying the world is getting a little too real for me at this moment. I'm gonna stress about it for my entire life.
Yeah. Silica is furious and turns into a giant like eyeball laser and completely obliterates the statue.
Turns it into flesh.
That's right.
Yeah.
Turns it into flesh. But yeah, that let him damage one of the stats. Another big thing is like eventually the stuff at the lab happens. They at a certain point, I think it was when they were when the people of Iso sort of like united to fight and defeat the guild and sort of I don't know if the word would be, I guess siege Jerichova. At a big point where all this is happening, the Fellowship gets teleported to Isolith, which Jericho has moved to and taken over.
Yes, because I screwed up.
I don't remember the exact details of that part. I think it involved... I remember...
I do. I can fill you in.
Yeah.
So it was in his office in Jerichova, and Silica and Gilly were there, and they got captured, and he was monologuing about his backstory. And Xenu somehow found out that Gilly and Silica got captured, so comes busting in and to attack Jericho, but he fucking like face plants her.
So eventually we get to our final sort of moment in the campaign where he's basically lining them up for execution. A thing about Isolith that's very important is Isolith is a genuine melting pot. It is all these different people from all these different cultures, as well as like people who grew up here and lived their lives here, just this sort of celebration of all of the different aspects of human culture throughout history. And Jericho essentially tries to make it a monoculture. But that's sort of like the big deal about Easlith. When Jericho lines them up for execution, he tells them his backstory, which is he is an epic divorce man.
God, it fucking wrecked me when Jericho fucking said that his wife divorced him.
I remember I was taking notes, and for that part, I did write down something like blah blah blah. Jericho's backstory, no one cares, shut the fuck up.
Yes.
Which was what you were going for.
Jericho's backstory is that he fucking sucks and nobody likes him. Yeah, he got divorced. His kid never spoke to him again, disowned him. Important detail that I thought about but never really wanted to bring up because I couldn't find a place to bring it up that didn't feel weird. A detail is he has a transgender daughter who he refuses to acknowledge the identity of.
Oh no! I thought he couldn't suck more, and I was wrong.
And yeah, I remember he did him Gilly a lot.
Yes. A big detail is that Jericho would just keep hemming Gilly.
Yeah.
Pretty much because he doesn't think that they them pronouns are real or being non-binary is real.
I know a few dads like that. Yeah, and also the key the key thing about Jericho is that his D&D group fell apart because no one liked his GMing.
Yes. He was too adversarial. It wasn't fun, which is somewhat reflective of the real guy because I remember towards the end of my time with the Pathfinder Society, he wasn't showing up to the ones at the shop I went to. He went to another one and mainly tried to run one very specific scenario in which he got to be an adversarial GM. Yeah, he fucking he sucks. No one likes him, and Gilly, I think, does something to him that takes away all his feeling.
Or Gilly was
Xenu did that. Yeah.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Xenu.
Gilly was going to execute Jericho, but then Silica and Xenu stepped in.
Yeah. Xenu cursed him with the worst fate she could think of: the inability to feel, like she had gone through for millennia. And then Silica burned out his connection to magic, with a never-ending flame. Like the dude is still on fire now.
Yeah, and that's basically the end of Jericho's story. There is some stuff with a sort of void copy of Jericho that's in the second campaign that has yet to see itself to fruition, so I won't elaborate on it.
Yeah.
One important detail I will note is the void copy of Jericho knows he's not Jericho and he doesn't care. But back to I think Jericho just lives a quiet life, and he's just not he just doesn't do anything. He has a life. He's just some shitty old man at this point, just living quietly, unable to make any friends or connections because he sucks, And yeah, that's sort of like the gist of the Otherworldly company.
I do really love, like, Jericho's concept as just, like, kind of a shitty dude who's been put in a position of, like, way too much fucking power to the point where he becomes an existential threat.
Yeah, it was very good.
And I've talked about this before on this podcast. I think it came up briefly in previous episodes I wasn't on, but I think one of the most fun ways to write a villain is to make up someone to get mad at.
God, so true. Speaking of someone to get mad at, I do just want to revisit one little moment towards the end. Because right before the final assault on Jerichova, we did have a little beach episode just to kind of take a break from everything. Before we did the finale.
Team meat rules.
Yeah, and Gilly's team and Corncob showed up to the beach to cause trouble, and they fucking settled it with a volleyball tournament. And I forget exactly like what the back and forth was, but like, kind of the stakes were like there was like some sort of wager. I think Gilly was like, okay, if I win, then you have to tell me about all your evil plans for the guild. And then, I was kind of setting it up as like a bait and switch where like, they had their volleyball match, and then like after the tournament, instead of being like this really confrontational scene of like, getting the enemy's plans, they were just like kind of all hanging out around a campfire, and Gilly was like, so why do you act the way you do? And they kind of had like a sort of honest emotional conversation about like the kind of people that, they want to be in the world. And it was nice.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to ruin that slightly. Because one of the things that stuck with me from that session was there were several different volleyball teams. Xenu and Gilly were on different teams. Same and Lance were on a team, though.
Yeah.
And the one of the things I remember is causing team conflict by getting them to argue about anime.
Oh yeah.
And then I messed it up because they were arguing about whether Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z was better. And I chimed in with, what about GT, which united them again?
Yeah, I think neither of them like GT. Some other fun stuff I remember. Oh, I was going to mention, Corncob does get to show up again in the second campaign. He does get to have some hijinks with Emery's player in that campaign, or Emery's character in that campaign, and
even saves the day.
Corncob redemption arc.
No,
I love Corncob.
Corncob also gets, I think at some point gets like some version of the Wienermobile. I don't remember if it was like a hot dog or if it was a literal corn cob.
Corn cob, yeah.
Yeah, it was a literal corn cob, that's right. Just a big bus shaped like a corn cob. Also, as you can probably guess by the name, corn cob is named after a drill tweet about not being owned.
Oh, I did not pick up on that, but now that you say it, yeah, it makes sense.
As soon as you said drill tweet, I realized, but I also did not know before then.
I honestly kind of forgot it for a while, and then as we were having this conversation, I remembered. yeah, it was a great, fun campaign.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Same.
It was so good, so like good and memorable, and yeah, so many like fun NPCs. It was a spectacular campaign.
Is there anything else any like fun questions? Anything you want to bring up to me or elaborate on?
Yeah, I think I covered most of what I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any plugs?
Yeah. You can find me on Tumblr at Bigger Challenge, co-host at Big Challenges. You can listen to the other podcasts I'm on, or I guess the podcasts I'm on. I'm just guesting on this one. You can listen to Pod of Greed, a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. That's POD of Greed. We actually last week we recorded the last set of episodes on the Dark Signers arc of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds. We'll be doing that'll probably be up by the time you hear this. It'll also we'll be doing like a little what's the word I'm looking for? Not recap. Just to sort of look back on the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds. And we'll probably start on the next arc in January. You can also listen to the Sonic Shuffle, a random and holistic Sonic lore podcast. Currently I'm editing the backlog of episodes. Next episode should be up. I think episode 118 should be up by the time you hear this. I just need to edit that, and 2 more episodes, and then I'll probably be reworking it in an interesting way. You can learn about that when I feel ready to share.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And one last one, which is Video Games, the Movie, the Podcast, video game movie review podcast I do with my friend Maxie. The SAG-AFTRA strike ended, so I uploaded an episode we recorded back in like May or possibly June or July on the Lara Croft Tomb Raider film. We recorded it before they had requested that podcasters not talk about struck work, but did not get it edited in time, so it's up now. And our next episode will be on Resident Evil Extinction. That's it for me.
Hell yeah, go listen to all of Dan's podcasts. I listen to them, and they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also on podcast. It's called We Rate Queerbait, and it's really it sure is a fucking podcast. We've been on one lately. The last episode we recorded was Holes, the book and movie about the juvenile carceral system and boys having to dig holes to improve their characters.
Yeah.
In parentheses, find treasure for one bastard lady. That was a lot of fun. Truly, it's recording that podcast sometimes makes me feel like I'm going a little bit insane, and that's how you know you're making a good ass podcast.
Yeah, that's a podcast where when I listen to it, I'm like, I wish I could be holding your hand. Because you're sometimes going through it.
It's incredible. It's one of my favorite things to do. I'm also on For Affinity with the username Space Robot. I do commissions. You can get in touch with me about those on my Discord or spacerobotart@gmail.com. I'm also on an upcoming audio drama pilot. News forthcoming, parentheses, uncertain time frame, but soon.
Yeah. I think I've been hearing some stuff about that moving forward.
Yeah, Sarah just dropped a status update on a recent episode of Pot of Greed.
Yeah. I also would like to note I am a past client of Emmy, and I've gotten quite a few pieces from her, and I really enjoy them.
Yeah, glad you like it.
Yeah, Emmy, good. So, is it over to me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, audience. It's me, Izzy. Look in the show notes. There's a link there to the Discord. Click on that. Join us. That's where you can find me, because I boycott social media, because social media is bad. You can like ask us questions, show off your own guys. We have some weekly streams. Emmy streams art on Fridays. On Mondays, we normally watch a show. Right now, it's Big Agu Mondays, where we watch some Digimon show that I can never remember the title of, except last week.
Digimon Big Agumon.
Yeah. Yes, that is the best way to remember it. The one with Big Agumon. Except last...
I won't elaborate. If you know, you know.
Yeah. So last week, Emery couldn't be there for the stream, so I picked... I continued some tokusatsu, and we watched a pretty lousy movie. It was not good, but we had a great time together watching it. And this show is part of the Noisepace network, noisepace.xyz. And I'm looking at the recently published shows, and half of them are the podcasts that Dan mentioned. So check them out.
Hell yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I think that about does it for us. We also have a Tumblr and a co-host. Both of those are Check Out This Guy. I think that's all. I think that's it. Until next time, don't become epic divorced. If you're divorced, just fucking be normal about it. Maybe take some time to reflect on yourself as a person.
Yeah, tabletop games are a good way of meeting new people and getting friends.
Hell yeah, so true. Bye.
Bye.